Okay, addendum to Deja Vu. I know, I did an episode about the ep uh, story as it was presented in the televised episode. For this one, I'm going to look at backstage, behind the scenes stuff and wonder if maybe possibly the people that were originally working on the episode had, at one point in time, had a different plan for it and examine what that plan was. And of course, start by looking at evidence. What do we know about the episode that gives us reason to question what the original idea for the script might have been? Well, one single specific thing, honestly. A Brielle for scientist costume was auctioned off at the It's a Wrap sale and auction. The tag states that it was for portraying a Calamarain scientist. In the finished episode, the name Calamarain is only used for a space monster. Okay, it's a space monster that's sentient and has the ability to think and plan and stuff. Actually, it's a race slash collective group of multiple individuals, apparently. There's a whole lot we don't know about the Calamarain. They don't tell us where it came from, only that it exists in its current form because Q did something to them and made them what they are. And they're so pissed about it that they want to kill Q and are willing to go to the effort of blowing up the entire USS Enterprise to kill Q. That's a lot of rage. Like utter, complete, murderous, we're going to kill you all and burn your house down kind of rage. Why? Well, the costume that was labeled a Calamarain scientist is this one. Um, One thing that's noteworthy here is that the reason why these characters are referred to as Brielle natives is that in the episode as broadcast, the race that lives on Brielle is not identified. Some sorts of canon sources refer to them as the Briella, but that wasn't in the finished episode. In the episode as broadcast, we have the name of the planet they live on and nothing else. Behind the scenes information indicates that they were a Federation member world, and thus they contacted Starfleet through standard Federation channels, and it's like, oh hey, we have a problem. Our moon is falling towards our planet. We need someone to fix that. And like, oh, we're a Federation member world. We need help from Starfleet. And then Starfleet's like, okay, fine, we'll send someone, and sends the Enterprise D. And then when the Enterprise D gets there, Q just zaps into their ship. And that's another thing about the Calamarain. The space monster, known as the Calamarain in the episode, somehow knows where Q is. Now, one could make the argument that Q2, who is seemingly the architect of the events of the episode, might have informed the Calamarain, maybe even moved the Calamarain to the Brielle system. Maybe, possibly. However, if the idea previously is correct, the Calamarain just lives here. It's entirely possible that the people on the planet didn't bother warning the Enterprise about the existence of the Calamarain entity because of the fact that it wasn't hostile to them. In fact, in the episode, the Calamarain entity isn't hostile to the crew of the Enterprise D. It's there specifically to kill Q. Any damage to the ship or fatalities among other members of the crew of the Enterprise D is purely collateral damage, not intentional damage to the ship or crew. That's a very interesting aspect of for a space monster. Is that the space monster is literally here to kill Q, only Q. And yeah, if it lives in this system because Q is the reason why it can't live planet side as humanoids or near humanoids, I guess, in this case. They're a rather odd alien race for TNG. It, they might just be hanging out in their home solar system because of the fact that it's home. It's where they came from. And that is one of those things that's just a weird thing, is that it's not explained in the episode why the Calamarain's there. We know why the Calamarain's pissed at Q. Vaguely. We don't actually have details. We never find out what Q did to the Calamarain. There is a point where he insisted that he did nothing bizarre or grotesque to them. There is, however, also a scene where Q makes the statement, well, it's alluded to here, but not directly quoted. If you think you're suffering now, wait till you see what happens next. Where he, as it says here, is like attempted to exact retribution. The Calamarain are currently in a state of suffering. What? Q made the claim he did nothing bizarre or grotesque to them. However, cruel, maybe. Because, like I said, is that Q himself said that the Calamarain were in a state of suffering. That is interesting. Again, like I said earlier, is that one thing that we know about the Calamarain is that Q did something to them that made them so angry they wanted to murder Q and were willing to have the entire Enterprise get destroyed as collateral damage in the process. And if the Calamarain are, shall we say, uninterested in living in their current state and would rather be humanoids than what they are now, that would explain quite a lot. And of course, like I said before, this is all based on, well, the primary thing is a single piece of information that may or may not have even been intentional. However, it fits with certain plot points in the episode as aired that, in and of themselves, without this, don't really make a whole lot of sense. You can rationalize it like, oh, well, maybe Q2 told the Calamarain how to get here, and that Q was here, and that the Calamarain should look for Q at Brielle. But the episode doesn't say that. It just leaves it up to you to guess. And honestly, that happens in a lot of ways, though. Is that another aspect of this episode that we don't know? Why was Q2 doing this in the first place? Well, obviously there's the idea that Q had been abusing his powers and not using them in a manner that the Continuum considered to be ethical. And thus Q2 had, in order to teach him a lesson, convinced the Continuum to strip him of his powers and thus put him into this bizarre test where Q2 causes the moon of Brielle to approach the planet and then zaps Q onto the ship in order to be forced to try to figure out how to stop the moon from crashing into the planet. Well, what eventually ends up happening is Q gets his powers restored when he decides to make a selfless sacrifice and die alone, uh, by leaving the ship in a shuttle, so that the Calamarain can chase him down in the shuttle and just kill him without causing collateral damage to the ship, which it does. And then Q2 is like, ah, yes, I see. Well, I guess you passed the test, and you can have your powers back. Zap. But it doesn't say what Q's crime was. Because we've seen Q do a lot of stupid things many times and not get punished like this for it. The episode doesn't say. In fact, the episode has Q talk about things that Q2 has done, one of which was making an asteroid belt cease to exist. Why exactly it happened? We don't know. Where was it? We don't know. But Q mentions it as a example of something that Q2 had done that Q2 deserved to be punished for, although apparently to a lesser degree. Was it turning the Calamarain humanoid race into a space monster that was the problem, and that Q was being punished for? Perhaps. And again, we don't know when the Calamarain had been molested by Q. The episode doesn't say. It's entirely possible that the current living population on Brielle doesn't know about the Calamarain because the incident happened 100 years ago, and that the Q continuum simply hadn't decided to punish Q for it yet. And Q2 talked them into doing it. So many unanswered questions in this episode. It really is a very, very good episode in terms of a character-centric story with moral choices and being a look at the inside of the Q continuum in a way that we never see before or since. So as an episode, it's very good, but there are so many unanswered questions. And a very tantalizing hint that certain aspects of the backstory that were left out, we have a little bit of an idea as to what they might have been. And also, if this race really is known as the Calamarain, why didn't I have a pretty good idea as to why they didn't put it into the episode. They didn't want to have the confusion of the space monster and the people they're trying to save being the same entity. Honestly, for a serial television thing, that's something that would be a little bit of a head scratcher and kind of sidetrack the plot. So they might have just cut it out so that they didn't have to explain it. However, the episode has a void. You don't understand why things are happening. You know what's happening, but you don't know why. The episode doesn't tell you why Brielle's moon is crashing into the planet, just that it is. The episode doesn't tell you why the Calamarain are what they are. It doesn't tell you what they used to be. It doesn't tell you why Q is even being punished, just that he abused his powers. And there's a bunch of things that you could suppose, like when Q threatens to make the Calamarain suffer even more than they are now, Q2 immediately is like, no, no, no. Haven't you learned anything yet? No, bad Q. And forces him not to. But we never see the Calamarain again. We don't know what happened to them at the end of the episode. Did Q just turn them back into humanoids? We don't know. Can Q turn them back into humanoids? He claims to be omnipotent. Surely if he's truly omnipotent, that wouldn't be beyond his power. But we don't see it. We don't know. And that is something that is very interesting about this episode, and something that when you try to lore dive this episode, it's like jumping into the void of dark space. Alrighty, well, I think I've covered everything there is to cover about this one. Very, very interesting lore applications in this, and implications too, I suppose. But I think I've hit all of the points we need to look at on this one. What exactly the Calamarain is? Very, very good question. And honestly, it is actually the biggest question to ask in the episode, other than why is Q being punished? All right, see you guys next time.